Naval Ideas. Naval Ideas, not available for primitives. Consists of boarding parties, improved rams, naval cadets, naval glory, press gangs, oak forests for ships, superior seamanship, and the finisher. So, what does boarding parties do? It gives you +1 naval leader shock. Additional naval shock helps you win naval battles by having better naval leaders than your opponents. Your ships do more damage than their ships, as long as they're led by the admiral that has the extra shock and whatnot. Next, improved rams. Your galleys have extra combat ability. Your galleys will then, 1-for-1, be more effective than your enemies if they don't have any buffs. The Ottomans are one of the most frightening enemies that make extensive use of galleys. Also, Venice often has a large number. However, be aware that the AI has a sort of unfortunate habit of not upgrading its boats to the newest class. So, by the mid-game, the AI can actually be running a large percentage of their fleet that are 2 or even 3 generations behind the times, meaning that a smaller, up-to-date navy can often beat their extremely large but very out-of-date navy. And this sort of combos well with that. Your smaller navy that will be up-to-date will also have extra combat ability and will completely wreck the older, out-of-date galleys of the AI, if they have fallen into that fairly typical AI trap. Next, Naval Cadets. +1 naval leader fire and -33% morale loss when you lose a ship. So the way naval combat works is when one of your ships dies, it makes all of the other ships lose some morale. This helps prevent that, so your battles will last longer, so you're more likely to win because you're losing less morale. You're more likely to have more ships stay in the fight longer, dishing out more damage longer, killing the enemy longer. And that's also assisted by the naval fire. If your leaders have an extra pip of naval fire, then usually you're going to be doing more damage with those ships. So it's a fairly significant combat, double bonus to combat, naval combat. Naval glory. If you're having all this naval combat because you've got all these bonuses to naval combat, well, you might as well get some extra prestige out of your naval battles. And extra naval tradition from your battles to help give you more naval morale, to help you win, you guessed it, even more naval battles. That being said, basically for a human player, the prestige and tradition gain from battles that you win is diddly squat. The AI gets something like a 10 or I forget if it's 20 times modifier to that, so they actually get cataclysmically huge amounts of morale and tradition from battles, but we aren't the AI, so we have to make do with our piddling amounts. Not a strong idea. Press gangs, +25% sailor recovery speed. So, extra sailor recovery helps a small nation that only has a little coast, so it doesn't have a large manpower pool, actually keep a merchant fleet running, which could otherwise be depleted by maintaining a merchant fleet. If you're the other useful condition is if you're trying to run a colonial empire with absolutely hundreds and hundreds of trade ships everywhere, ensuring that all the trade comes home to Papa Bear, that will require a cataclysmically huge sailor recovery rate. But although you have a large naval force limit, if you're a huge colonial empire, because of all your colonial nations giving you extra naval force limit, they don't directly actually give you extra sailors unless you start using the press sailors interactions, which will make them all terribly rebellious, so I don't suggest you do that. This is one way of keeping up with the sailor use of such a large colonial empire. Next, oak forests for ships, +20% heavy combat ship ability. Your heavies, much like the galley ability before, will, 1-for-1, be more effective than those of your enemies. Just make sure that you don't expect your +20% combat ability out-of-date ships to beat new ships. The way that ship combat works in EU4 is that there's no way of accumulating enough buffs that you're going to overcome being a ship level ahead. So if your choices were to get this or to upgrade your existing ships to the newest ones, I would suggest doing that ahead of doing this. That being said, if you are engaging someone who has the same level of ships as you, this will be terribly helpful for your heavies. And the final idea, superior seamanship, +20% morale of navies and +20% global engagement, naval engagement width. So global naval engagement width is a bonus that allows your combat death stack to beat an opponent's death stack more effectively because you are basically outflanking them. Your fleet is a bit wider, so you have extra ships firing on their ships. You've got, in much the same way that a wider army on land gets to flank the smaller army, you get the same sort of thing in naval terms. If this in and of itself isn't enough, each and every one of those ships has extra morale, so you'll be winning any fight that would otherwise be equal because of your extra morale, and the way that the naval morale system works, where when you sink an enemy ship you lose morale. So if you've got extra morale, your ships are going to be staying in that fight significantly longer. So a double whammy of another double whammy of naval combat bonuses. And finally, the finisher, plus 10% ship durability, basically equates to plus 10% ship health. If you want to think about it that way, your ships can take 10% extra hits, or 10% more damage, until they start sinking from damage. So this, again, lets them keep in the fight. It lets them sit around dealing damage longer. They survive longer, so they take more hits. It lets you win otherwise equal fights with your extra HP. So, Naval Ideas, in summary, provides a flurry, just an overwhelming number of bonuses to ensure naval combat dominance. The only thing it doesn't give you that you might want is the ability to actually have extra ships. So you're going for, it's sort of the naval idea of quality rather than quantity. It gives you extra leader stats, extra ship health, extra morale, extra combat ability, extra prestige, and extra naval tradition, both of which translate into even more morale and even more sailor recovery, as well as extra sailors directly with the sailor recovery idea to keep your fleets maintained with sailors from all the combat that you are presumably getting in and smacking your enemies about in.